Some of you I know really well, and some of you don't know me at all. So I'll just introduce myself as Ted Waltmeyer. I am a past president of the Summer Place Board. My first show with Summer Place was back in 1977. Damn Yankees and Tina St. Angelo was part of that production. And I love theater. And I understand that I really can't use the term TED Talk because it violates copyright. So somebody the other day suggested we could do Theodore Theater. So let's consider this Theodore Theater. And we're talking about West Side Story, the classic musical. And Summer Place is currently doing it. There are 2 more weekends, and it's a pretty special production.
Yes,
I mean, from the minute it started, you saw how committed the Jets and the Sharks were to owning their territory on the stage. So that said, let me start. Here's a letter from Stephen Sondheim to Leonard Bernstein, who was conducting in Israel after West Side Story opened in 1957. Dear Lenny, so all is very cheery at the Winter Garden, although benefit audiences have dampened the general atmosphere. They seem to like the show though, and on that, too many martinis feeling it's not really noticed. Sometimes the Hand for America hardly covers the scene change, and sometimes Lee Theodore, who played Anybody's, had trouble getting the audience to stop at the end of G Officer Krupke. Something's Coming in the Jet song still get weak hands, but the applause at the end of the Rumble, and sometimes not until Krupke. But as I say, they end up liking the show, so don't worry. I haven't seen a complete performance in 2 weeks, so I don't know how sloppy they're getting, but Jerome Robbins, is going to do some rehearsing tomorrow. So that was written and sent to Lenny very shortly after West Side Story opened in 1957. So here's another quote from Stephen Sondheim. For most people, West Side Story is about racial prejudice, but what it's really about is musical theater, the blending of book, music, lyrics, and dance into seamless telling of a story. And in his book, The World of Musical Comedy, which actually was the first book that I read in junior high about the subject that I've become very passionate about. The great triumph is that West Side Story is impressionistic, but at the same time, it gives the illusion of reality. So, there's no doubt West Side Story first produced in 1957 and filmed in a faithful adaptation in 1961, and then again in 2021, and revived on Broadway constantly after a 732 performance run and a return engagement in 1960 for 249 performances. West Side Story is a story that audience wants to revisit. And this is the 3rd time that Summer Place has produced West Side Story. The first time being in 1993, when Summer Place vacated the pavilion on the central campus of North Central College and occupied this space in North Central Auditorium for the first time. So Tonight, we're going to examine how West Side Story got to be West Side Story. And with all of the time that I have spent researching West Side Story, I feel like I can address the collaborators Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the book, Leonard Bernstein, who wrote the music, and Stephen Sondheim, who wrote the lyrics, and Jerome Robbins, who directed and choreographed. I can call them Arthur, Lenny, Steve, and Jerry. So that's how I'm going to refer to them tonight. So what was the genesis for West Side Story? I think we need to actually go back to the early 1940s, where Leonard Bernstein wrote a ballet called Fancy Free, which was choreographed by Jerome Robbins. So that connection started. And it was enhanced in 1954 when the show On the Town opened. And it basically took the idea of the ballet Fancy Free and expanded it into a full evening. And that had a book by Betty Comden and Adolph Green, hereafter referred to as Betty and Adolph. And the other notable thing is it had one song where Leonard Bernstein supplied the lyric. It's a really cool song called I Can Cook Too. So let's go now to 1948.